Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who's going to give us the opportunity to draw some parallels between the employee experience and the customer experience and making change happen. Andy Swann was raised in the UK as one of 5 children. Despite ambitions to become a rock star, he found himself studying populations at the London School of Economics, where he became a music editor of the student newspaper. It was this combination of interests and a lack of career direction that set him on the path to where he is now. A dad who spent 30 years in a career he didn't particularly enjoy, and a mom who started a lifestyle business from home that grew into a trusted local recruiting service inspired Andy's entrepreneurial mindset and a fascination with the relationship between people and work. This curiosity grew as Andy gained work experience, developing into a frustration with unnecessary bureaucracy and the idea that a disconnect between people and organization was costing everyone dearly. This eventually manifested itself in the Work Project, a year-long experiment on workplaces with Andy as a guinea pig, which took him from dairy farms to Downtown Abbey and into very famous companies. From there, his work diversified by design to follow personal passions and maintain the adventure. Today, Andy finds himself as the founder of Simple, Better Human, a leading boutique agency creating fresh perspectives for global brands and complex organizations. He is a passionate experimenter and investigator on the connection between people, work, and organizations. As author of The Human Workplace, Andy has become a leading voice in the drive towards people-first organizations, and he speaks around the world on the benefits of taking a human approach to organizational development. Through his role as changemaker with BDG Architecture Design, Andy creates people-focused transition programs for behavioral and habit change. He also consults and advises on strategies, techniques, and actions for creating amazing human workplaces. Andy splits his time between Atlanta, Georgia, and the UK, working globally and enjoying every opportunity for adventure and exploration. People often ask him what he does with any free time he gets. His response is simple. Everything I do is my choice. It's all free time. It's our responsibility to make the best of it. Andy Swann, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Hey, Jim, I'm ready to go.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
You know, my current passion is the relationship between people and work and the organizations they work for, and what makes people kind of passionate about the mission of an organization, what makes them a customer of an organization, why do you go to work for the company you work for, why do you do what you do every day? And I really loved in your introduction there, you just mentioned your Legion. I think for me, that's a really big thing. You know, your followers, what are the people getting behind the mission and the message that you have? And this is exactly what fascinates me, how that same message comes across in organizations, companies, workplaces, all of these things.
You know, I mean, thanks for sharing that. And as you know, you were talking and me getting an opportunity to look through the book, you know, there's several things that actually stood out to me. And I even had the opportunity to listen to you speak, and you talk about how organizations and the technologies and things like that change, but people don't. However, in order for us to be innovative and continue to be part of an organization that does thrive, we have to be able to pivot. And one of the things you talk about in the book is fluid iteration. Give us a little bit more insight into that.
Completely. I mean, you know, where do you start? People is where you start. So I have a mantra that says when people thrive, organizations thrive too, because actually who's better to tell your organization how to pivot and best serve the customers than the customers themselves? Who's best to tell you how they can work best than your employees themselves? And all of this stuff, the future and innovation and all creativity and all of these buzzwords of the modern business world, they're all based around people, because people have ideas. Ideas are where innovation comes from. So the future is based around people. And fluid iteration is literally that idea that constantly plugging into your people, constantly gaining insight, whether it's people inside your business as employees, whether it's people outside your business as customers or your wider community or your Legion, all of these people can be fluid inside and outside your organization, and they can contribute to ideas, and you can take those ideas at all times, and you can constantly be changing and moving forward. And that word iteration, actually, you don't have to pull the rug out and completely change everything. It's that pivot, isn't it? It's a small change, a little tweak. It's an iteration that you go from what we are currently to what the same thing looks like tomorrow. You don't have to completely change direction and go somewhere completely different.
And I also love in the book, because when you start talking about, the ability to, really, engage and cause people to want to be part of something, be part of that community, be part of, that customer, identified group is, you talk about the structures associated with it. And so when you start talking, about the whole, the fluidity aspects of iteration, is that you can't have a whole lot of, parameters and walls. And you talk about 10 key ideas on structure. And to me, that just really stood out. If you could just kind of explain, that a little bit.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think for me, structure is a big word. You hear in a lot of management theory and business theory, they talk about structure, and they talk about removing structure and self-management and how the management frameworks look and how leadership works and how your organizational diagram looks. And I think for me, you can have any structure and you can work within that. The minimal structure you need to enable your organization to succeed. And what success looks like is the right people in the right places doing the right things, whether that's customers or employees. You're building a community. And I think you just need to find the structure that's right for your organization. So for me, a big word in that is freedom within parameters. You can remove as many parameters as possible to enable people to do their best work in the best way, but there will always be some parameters. Don't kill anyone, don't break the law, whatever it might be. For example, quite often when we talk about organizations and workplaces, we think about office jobs. And office jobs, yes, you can do from home. A lot of them you can do from a coffee shop. But if you're a manufacturing company and you have to run a manufacturing machine between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., you can't say to your manufacturing team, the people running that machine, come in at midnight if you like, because that's when you work your best. Actually, that machine has to run. So that's a parameter for that business. But the real thing about structure is actually look at what is the minimum structure you need? What do you need to achieve as a business? How do you need to do it? How do you need people to behave? And what's the absolute minimum rules or parameters you can put around that while giving people the freedom to act and do their best work? And the less structure you have, the more things can happen, like information can flow. And when information can flow between two people or 2 points in your company, that's when new perspectives and new ideas come from. That's how you can understand the insight on how to serve your customers better, how to give your employees a better experience at work, to enable them to do their best job. It's just all about building a community and enabling it to thrive.
Yeah, as you were talking, I started thinking about something that I've always said for the longest time is, how the word policy is just such a nasty thing. It's nasty from a customer experience perspective. It's nasty from an employee perspective. And when you start talking about fluid iteration, if you're overladen with policy, it ain't going to happen.
Completely. So there's a little piece in the book actually that talks about policy. We don't go into it in detail, but my view is if you can't tweet a policy on the old-fashioned 140 character tweets, if you can't tweet a policy, then it's too complicated. Actually, everything should be minimal. It should be common sense as far as possible, and just get out of the way and enable people to be their best in pursuit of the organizational goals.
Oh, that's so true. And so so my wife and I, when we first got married, we lived in Memphis for many years. So it definitely stood out to me when I looked and I read about the 5 tips to introduce Elvis into your organization. How do we get him in?
So I can't take credit for the introducing Elvis into your business idea. So it's from a guy called Chris Barris-Brown. He runs a company called Upping Your Elvis. And I was lucky enough to interview him for the Human Workplace book. Now, he's a friend of mine and he does some great work with some really big companies. And actually, the whole idea is around actually, if you bring that bit of rock and roll and that bit of sparkle into your work and your leadership and the way your organization operates, then it's going to be more successful, because actually we succeed when we stand out, when we do our own thing, when we're individual, and when we actually pursue our own goals rather than trying to copy everyone else. We need to be excited by our work, because when we're excited by our work, or we're excited by the products we're consuming or the places we go, that's when we enthuse about them. That's when we spread the word. That's when we do our best. That's when we contribute our best. It's a really simple idea, but it's just about exciting people and bringing that little bit of rock and roll sparkle into everything you do.
Well, and as you started going through and I was looking at the book, I mean, ultimately, a lot of these things can be easy for a brand new organization. In other words, you kind of just set things in motion and in place, from the beginning. But as an organization starts to age and you have, talking about iteration, you have the iterations of different leaders and leadership and different, ways that they go about doing business, and you start getting all of this, heaviness about the organization and losing a lot of that fluid iteration. We're talking about having to change. We're having to change our behavior and change what we've been doing in order to open things up so that we can, take advantage of the opportunities that lay in front of us. And so I've seen a lot of different philosophies associated with change: the top down, the bottom up, the inside out, the outside in. I mean, it goes all over and over. But you presented something to me that I hadn't seen before, which is free range change. Of course, first of all, my mind went to chicken, but that's not what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Okay, absolutely. And I think it would have been really easy for me to write a book from a startup perspective with all of these ideas and just go, when you're 3 people, stick your hoodies on, you can do this stuff. And it's great. But I think what I really wanted to do with this book was understand how this stuff can come through in larger, more complicated, older organizations, but actually who's out there already doing it. And we found some great examples. And a big part of the work that I do with organizations is helping them change for the future, helping them be simpler, better, more human, and how they bring those behaviors and habits into their work and their workplaces. And actually, this idea of free range change is that it can come from anywhere in your organization. It shouldn't be a change process that says, we're here, we're going to here, that's the end to end, we're going to do it, and putting the change in a box. Actually, what you really need to understand is, who are these people? How are they behaving? How do they want to behave? How does the organization need them to behave? Are they the right people? Who within that group is able to be part of that change? How do we leverage their support in adopting the changes we need to bring in? And it's just kind of unleashing the change and all the different aspects of it from this kind of box of process. It goes back to what we were saying about policy. You don't need to put things in a box. We can understand the big overview, but also understand that change is cyclical. Today's change isn't an end-to-end thing. It's part of tomorrow's organization. And tomorrow's organization will keep moving forward as well, because as long as the world's spinning, things keep evolving. So the minute we stop still, or we think that a change is finished or anything we're doing is complete, that's when we get left behind in the business world. So we need to be constantly moving. And that's just the idea behind free range change.
Okay, so when I start thinking about this whole change process, and I get what you're saying from the free range perspective and essentially finding your champions, right? Because we do know, I mean, when you look at the empirical evidence associated with, change and activators and all of that there's really the folks who are the champions of change that can actually do something more than just, say something about it. It's a really small percentage of folks. I mean, we're talking, 2-3% that actually can be the ones who can, take it forward and lead the change process. And they are spattered, throughout your organization, but we have to identify them. How could we identify those folks faster?
Completely. Identifying them is absolutely key, because there will be people in your organization, and it's really wrong to assume they're going to be the leadership, because yes, the leadership might say, we've got some insight, we need to change, but broadcasting that from the top down isn't going to drive adoption. You need to think of any change. Think of it like the day an iPhone comes out. Who's the person waiting outside the Apple store overnight, ready to high-five the employees when they open the door and be the first in there, walk out, celebrating they've got that brand new product? So they're your ultimate change champions. They're the first people you need to find. So actually putting the word out about here's what's happening, and just if you're communicating it within the organization and seeing who comes forward and says, this is an amazing idea, I can't wait for this, they're your number one champions. Then your second wave are the people who are going to the store on the first day to buy the phone and being very excited about it and talking about it. And it goes right through to those people who are the last people and digging their heels in and saying, no, I'm not going to buy this phone. Even though it might be a good thing, I'm going to pretend I hate it. And actually, the adoption curve just needs to go over that halfway point to get the weight of popular opinion in favor of change. And that's what you're doing. You're identifying those evangelists, those excited people who are going to bring everyone else with them because they're enthused about it. And actually, they could be anywhere within your organization. They could be at the top, admittedly, but actually, they could be anywhere. They could be the intern who's just come in on their first day and can't believe what they're seeing. And you really need to be plugged into your organization in terms of information and communication to allow them to rise to the top so you can really leverage their excitement.
Okay, so as you were saying that, I started thinking about, as a society, oftentimes what we've done, to those types of people, and we've outcast them. I mean, they aren't the ones who we typically run around and embrace because they're always causing us to think about things differently and slowing down something that we're trying to get done. So, I mean, how do, as an organization, you talk about embracing, it's not just embracing as, a person who may be, responsible for identifying and finding those people, but it's also having the organization embrace those types of people. So how do we help them be successful?
So a big phrase here is positive activism. So traditionally, organizations will do what they've always done because it's worked before and they'll continue to do it. But actually, that doesn't work in the modern world. We live in an age of disruption and innovation. You need to be challenging. You need to be looking for what's the big next idea? What's that pivot that's going to create the future for us? So you do have to have that different mindset to be able to plug into that. And you need to enable those people who are going to challenge the organization for the right reasons. Let's be clear on that. It has to be for the right reasons. Disruption in a negative sense is bad, but disruption in a positive sense for the right reasons within the organization is a great thing. And so we call those people positive activists. They're the people who will be excited about doing these things in favor of a great future. So they'd be happy to put their job on the line for it, their reputation on the line, because they believe so much in doing something positive. And there are great examples of them in the book. I found people in big organizations who time and time again were modernizing their organization and being, getting in trouble with the board, having their colleagues go against them and having people say this will never work. But they believed so much that this was the future of the organization. They went for it. They risked their own jobs and their own reputation on it. And time again, it pays off.
Well, hopefully that'll give many others encouragement. I mean, with all of this, you have to have the resiliency. You have to have, the ability to overcome and adapt and go against the grain. And all it requires some energy. And one of the things that we look at on the show are quotes to help give us that. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
Okay, so absolutely. I think, energy is a big word here. And it goes back to what we said at the very start. If you're in the wrong place, if you're in, all an organization needs to thrive is the right people in the right places doing the right things. Now, if you're the wrong person, you'll know it. So take yourself away, go somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with shaking hands and just saying, this isn't my place. But actually, you get energy from being somewhere where you believe in it. So I think, I'm trying to think of a soundbite as I talk here, but energy comes from being in the right place. And when you're in the right place and when you're not. And having that shared mission and being able to achieve something together is a very exciting thing, whatever it is you're trying to achieve. That's your absolute starting point. So you get energy from being one of the right people in the right place, doing the right things. And I still go back to what I said at the very start. When people thrive, organizations thrive too. And, thriving is about energy as well.
Well, and a lot of this, when it goes going back to what it kind of started on, is talking about fluid iteration. And in order for us to reiterate, in order for us to pivot and do all that, that means we've had humps that we've had to get over. Is there a time where you've had to get over the hump that you can share?
Completely. Back in September 2014, I had been working in an organization I didn't particularly like. I was responsible for a lot of things. I got no satisfaction from my job, and it really badly impacted my home life and my mental health and my physical health and all of these feelings of negativity. And I took it upon myself to really go and experiment with what work is, what my relationship with it was, and what would enable me to thrive. And over time, I discovered an ability to design my own career and do the work that I really wanted to do and that energized me. And as I put that together, I kind of realized this integration between life and work rather than these two separations. And that's the energy that I now take forward and I bring into organizations and bring to individuals as well. So it's my own journey that's actually enabled me to share a lot of insight into the work that I do.
Okay, so back then, I'm starting to think, and I'm seeing you in this organization, right? And I'm starting, and I'm thinking that, like with many of us, we carry the burden, and just think about us sinking lower and lower by the weight of that burden. And at some point, we cast it off. Do you remember when your cast-off point was?
I absolutely remember. I just remember I was sitting at a barbecue. I was having a conversation with somebody, and I watched him tell me that he'd been in his job for 10 years. And I congratulated him. He told me he hated it. He hated his employer. He hated the company he worked for, everything he did. And I said, why did you go there? And he said, I go there for the same reason everybody else goes to work, and that's to pay for the time I'm not at work. And I sat there and I thought, what a shame. And then I realized I've been doing exactly the same thing. And so I took it upon myself and I made a resolution right there and then to do something about it. And I don't regret it at all.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I can tell you what you just did right there is one of the reasons why I continue to spend the time and effort to do the Fast Leader Show, is that somewhere, sometime, somebody is going to hear somebody else's story and then self-reflect and say, oh boy, I got to pivot. Oh boy, I have to reiterate. Oh boy, that's me. Because we all fall into that trap. It's just a natural progression of being a human being. If we continue, that's what evolving is all about. So thank you for doing that. Okay, so I had the opportunity to chat off mic, and you're actually splitting time between here and the UK. We shared reasons why. But when you start thinking about the difference in societies and the work that you're doing over there versus here, what is some of the subtle differences that you see?
Absolutely. I do a lot of work with global companies, and I see a lot of mindsets, the very corporate mindsets, and I think they're quite global and they're easier. You kind of break them apart and you try and bring some energy in. But if you're talking kind of culturally, the difference between the mindset that you might get over in the UK compared to the US, I think in the UK we're very hesitant. We're kind of pessimists. We wait for the worst to happen. If we have an idea, we always think, it might not work, so we won't try it, which is why we then resolve not to do anything about it. And I think in the US, you have the opposite almost. You have an idea and you just assume it's going to work and it's going to be amazing and everyone's cheering it and going for it. And it's great. And those two polar opposites, there's a really happy medium somewhere in the middle where you should have the enthusiasm going into an idea, but also just making sure you're constantly sanity checking the whole way. Is this going to work? Do I have the insight to tell me how it's going at the moment? Not just kind of plunging in head first and hoping for the best and then surfacing to find out it's gone wrong. So I think there's a lovely happy medium, which is why I bounce between the two places. I see myself kind of mid-Atlantic somewhere, adopting that happy medium. But I really love the positivity of the US. Everybody has that kind of belief that they can make something happen when they really want to. And that's why I like being over here. But equally, every now and then you need that kind of dose of Britishness.
Well, I mean, it's an important point because a lot of times, even for me, when I start thinking about, even just the way that I think about things, it may not be a universal, or a global perspective. I think we do have some, very important commonalities amongst us all. And that is, the need to be part of a community and a group and have a purpose. But how we actually execute within that, is where some of the differences occur. And we need to appreciate that diversity in order for us to move the entire collective forward instead of leaving some behind.
Absolutely. I think diversity is a really, really relevant point, and we touch upon it in the human workplace as well. I think that particularly where you need perspectives to have ideas and creativity, the biggest, most important thing any organization can do is to be completely inclusive and as diverse as possible, because that's where you get the biggest contribution and the greatest range of opportunity and perspectives from. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay,
so now you got the book, you're doing some consulting, you're splitting your time between here and the UK. You got a lot of things going on, but if you were to look at one thing that was a goal, what would it be?
One thing is a goal. That's a great thing. So this year, one of the things I would really like to do is, I had an idea. So in the US, one of my favorite things is sweet tea. It's something we don't have in the UK. We're a nation of tea drinkers. We drink hot tea. You drink amazing sweet tea. It's cold. It's the most amazing thing I've discovered over here. So my mission for this year, and it's completely unrelated to my standard job, and I love the idea of passion projects and side projects that enable us to do these alternative things. One of my goals for this year is to bring sweet tea to the UK.
And the Fast Leader Legion, and even a Southern boy here, wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Andy, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust, yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Andy, Swann, are you ready to hold down?
Let's do this.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Insights, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-belief.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Listen, listen, and listen.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Informality, under your tie, under your top button, and just be part of things. Stand back and see what happens.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Communication, the ability to listen and to speak back.
What would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners? And it could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to The Human Workplace, People-Centered Organizational Development on your show notes page as well.
Thank you. I love the purple cow.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Andy Swann. Okay, Andy, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you have been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Be yourself. It took me a lot of years of trying to compromise before I realized that just being myself was my biggest asset. So I would say, don't compromise. Don't try to be someone else at work. Be yourself, because it's the best thing you can ever do.
Andy, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Well, likewise, thank you for having me. So my website is andyswann.co, Swann with 2 N's. I'm on Twitter at andyswann with 2 N's again, so as not to annoy my single N nemesis. I'm on LinkedIn, all the usual places, but please start on my website and always get in touch. I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Andy Swann, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.